The Continental UltraContact costs 19% more than the Hankook Ventus Prime 4. But here's the interesting part. It also lasts 32% longer. So, are you actually paying more for the Continental, or could it be a better long-term deal? And there's one major problem. When the road gets wet, the cheaper Hankook stops significantly shorter. Let's look at the numbers. Today, we are comparing the Hankook Ventus Prime 4 versus the Continental UltraContact. The results comes from the 2023 ADAC summer tire test. Let's start with probably the most important category for everyday road safety, wet braking. The Hankook Ventus Prime 4 stops in 35.8 meters, while the Continental UltraContact needs 38.3 meters. That is a difference of 2.5 meters. Or put it another way, the UltraContact is 7% behind the Hankook. And 2.5 meters is not a small difference when you're trying to stop in an emergency. But what about aquaplaning? Here, the difference becomes much smaller. The Hankook reaches 77.6 km slipping speed, while the Continental manages 76.5 km per hour. So, the UltraContact is only 1% behind. Overall, wet performance goes to the Hankook Ventus Prime 4, and wet braking is where it creates the biggest advantage. Moving on to dry roads, things get much closer. The Hankook stops in 36.6 meters, while the Continental stops in 37.1 meter. Only half a meter separates them. That puts the Continental just 1% behind. For normal driving, I would consider these two relatively close in the dry. But now, we come to a category that completely changes this comparison. This is where Continental UltraContact fights back, and it fights back hard. The Hankook Ventus Prime 4 achieves an estimated 42,200 kilometers. The Continental UltraContact, 55,900 kilometers. That is 13,700 kilometers more mileage, or a massive 32% advantage for the Continental. This is easily one of the biggest differences in this comparison. And the advantage continues when we look at abrasion. The Hankook produces 67.6 milligrams per kilometer per ton. The Continental produces only 52.5. That gives the UltraContact another 29% advantage. So, if your priority is keeping your tires as long as possible, the Continental is clearly ahead. What about noise? The Hankook records 71.7 decibel, the Continental 71 decibel. That makes the UltraContact around 0.7 decibel quieter, or roughly a 1% advantage. There is another small win for the Continental in fuel consumption. The Hankook records 5.8 liters per 100 km, while the Continental had 5.7 liters per 100 km. That gives the UltraContact a 2% advantage. Again, not a huge difference by itself. But if you combine better fuel efficiency with much stronger mileage, and you start to understand where Continental was optimizing this tire for. And now comes the big question. How much are you paying for all of this? For the 205/55 R16, the Hankook Ventus Prime 4 costs around 70 euros, while the Continental UltraContact costs 83 euros. That makes the Continental 13 euros more expensive. At first glance, that sounds expensive. But remember, you are paying 19% more upfront for a tire that delivers 32% more mileage in this test. And that makes the value equation much more interesting. In summary, from my perspective as a tire expert, if wet safety and upfront price are my priorities, I would choose the Hankook Ventus Prime 4. That 2.5 meter wet braking advantage is meaningful, and the Hankook is also 19% cheaper. But if I drive a lot of kilometers and I want to maximize how long my tires last, the Continental UltraContact becomes extremely compelling. You pay 19% more, but the ADAC measured 32% more mileage, together with lower abrasion, slightly lower noise, and better fuel efficiency.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.